Hello, this is going to be the fifth of the Histrivia series. This is going to be a combination because the two kind of go in hand in hand. It's going to be the Boston Tea Party of 1773 and what followed because of that, the Intolerable Acts that the British Parliament passed in 1774 as a reaction to the Boston Tea Party. Now, the Boston Tea Party, it was mainly about taxes. A lot of people think that it was just on tea, but the funny thing is, the tea was actually an exemption. What it showed was in 1773, you had before that tons of acts that Parliament passed. You know, the Sugar Act, the Stamp Act, stuff like that, and the response of the colonies weren't really that good. So what the British Parliament in London decided to do was, okay, we'll get rid of all of the acts and laws and taxes except for the symbolic tea tax of 1773. So they thought that this would be fine and the colonies would be grateful that the majority of the taxes except for one were completely gone. Well, that wasn't the case, and the colonists were really pissed. So, in December of 1773, colonialists from the group known as the Sons of Liberty dressed up as Mohawk Indians to raid a British ship that just got into the port of Boston with a big supply of tea. So, they dumped the tea into the harbor, and that was it. But what followed after that was the British response to it, which were known as the Intolerable Acts. Now, the Intolerable Acts was the British Parliament's response to the Sons of Liberty doing the Boston Tea Party in December 1773. So, in 1774, they enacted a lot of laws, mainly in the face of Boston, Massachusetts, because that's where the incident happened, but also in other areas too. What Parliament did after in these Intolerable Acts were several things. Some were directed at Boston, others were directed at the colonies, but it was mainly an attack on Boston. First, the Boston ports, Boston Harbor, totally closed. No colonist can enter. The only ones that could enter were British military ships. Those were the only ones allowed through the port of Boston. Other than that, if you went through the ports of Boston, you would be arrested. Another thing that this Intolerable Act did was reduce the powers of the Massachusetts colonial government and really made their colony in charge basically in London. It would run strictly from London, no self-governing for the Massachusetts colony. Colonial governments were banned, town meetings were outlawed, free speech was banned, anyone thought of sedition would be arrested and trialed real quickly, in accordance to the law of England. And another one of these Intolerable Acts was kind of a slap in the face to the colonialist was the Quebec Act. Now, the Quebec Act is a very interesting act. While the British Parliament suppressed liberties in areas such as Massachusetts, they were giving liberties away to their former enemies. After the French and Indian War, the British secured a lot of French territory in what is now known as Canada. And one of these territories was the Quebec territory that the French had. So the British took that over. Well, in 1774, while they were giving out these Intolerable Acts to basically their whole British North America, the Quebec Act gave self-governance to the Quebec area, meaning that the Quebec area will have free elections, they will have free representation, they will be able to self-govern themselves from the colony, and will not be subject to British rule so much. This really pissed the colonists out, as you can imagine, and it furthered horrible relations between them. So, anyway, that's basically it as far as the gist of the Intolerable Acts. You have the Boston Port Act, the Government Act, the Quebec Act. Oh, and one more act. You also have the Quartering Act. The Quartering Act was basically helpful for the British military. It basically said that any colonialist has to invite a British soldiers into their house. Like if a British regiment was on patrol in your area, and it was like bad weather or nighttime, and a British officer bangs on your door, in the middle of the night, saying, "Hey, my troops need shelter." You could not say no to that British officer. You had no choice but to let the officer and his troops lodge in your house for the night, no matter what your opinion was. You had to do that. So anyway, those were basically the Intolerable Acts, basically in a nutshell. I know I could have gone over more in depth, but I didn't really have that much information on hand. So that's it for this fifth video. Look out for the next one.